Arun is the Dean of the Stanford Doerr School of Sustainability. And he spoke at the Indiaspora Members Forum last year. His remarks were both a little alarming and also inspiring. Alarming because they laid out the scope of the climate problem quite starkly, but inspiring because they cajoled us, for example, us at Indiaspora even, to start thinking more actively about how we can play a role as a convener in the climate space, which, as you can see, we are carrying forward today. One little fun factoid about Arun that is relevant for today is that I am pleased as a fellow cricket fan that he loves cricket. And the reason that that is relevant today is because in our last conversation, we were talking about how he has some very nascent ideas bubbling up in his head about how we can sensitize society through mass entertainment events that they love, sporting events, about the impact of climate change on the world, right? Who wants the World Cup cricket final to get rained out, for example, right? So anyway, that can be for a later date. I don't know if he's going to talk about it today, but over to you, Arun, for your closing keynote.
Fantastic. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for hanging in there. I know I'm between your wine and samosa. I'm part of the samosa caucus. It's always inspiring to listen to Vinod, but this is the first time I heard him say income redistribution. I was going to run a pilot program between him and me. But he knew I was going to say that, so that's why he escaped. But it's great to be here. You were right that last time I spoke in that hotel in San Jose, I think I scared the heck out of people. And I thought, that's it. I'm never going to be re-invited again, and here I am. So the only thing I can say is that you like horror movies. Okay, so let me give it, and Vinod is involved in this as well. He understands some of the issues that we're dealing with, but this is a big one. It is the defining challenge and opportunity of the 21st century, according to me. That's my opinion. You can make up your own mind. I'm going to start with some history, and I'm going to, I hate to put slides on a Friday evening, but bear with me. First, human history. I hope it's working. It's not working. It's working out. Oh, it's not working out there. Okay, all right. Now it's all working. This is the human population. It took 300 million years, it took 1 million years to increase the world population to 300 million, and it takes 13 years to add 1 billion. Just think about it. This is not an exponential increase. This is a super exponential. And those dips down in the bottom, those were pandemics. This pandemic, we survived because of technology, as Vinod pointed out. mRNA vaccines was just a game changer. I call this the human tsunami because the Earth has never seen anything like this before. But this is not the only tsunami. There is a human consumption tsunami. Vinod mentioned about GDP. GDP is, we take it as gospel truth. I was deeply involved when I was in the government in DOE, Department of Energy, to stop the BP oil leak. When an oil spill happens, the GDP actually goes up because you've got to put resources to clean up. So, yet we are hung up on GDP, and that's fine. It has improved the quality of life, certainly a measure of that. And the outer curve is the per capita GDP. Inside is the total GDP of the world. It's about $100 trillion today globally. And this is ultra super exponential. I call it consumption because people are producing something because someone is consuming. It's very simple. And to produce those things, you need energy. And I put this not in that long time scale, but only the 4 generations of my lifetime. I was born in the 1960s. My wife is right here, and we were born in the same year. Our kids were born in the 1990s. My parents were born in the 1920s and 30s. My grandparents were born at the turn of the century. I mean, I think it's similar for everyone. And we went from an agrarian society to one, to produce those things, this is 80% by fossil fuel. Okay, and it should not be a surprise that there's a CO2 tsunami. I mean, that's natural. I don't know what's this thing about it's a hoax. It is true. It's simple math. And this is not the only thing that is going on. You can think about a plastic tsunami, right? Water. So let me show you a few others. So here's a pop quiz. Someone asked me to include the pop quiz again. You're at a university. You're at Stanford. Welcome to Stanford. Here's your quiz. They'll be grading at the end. I'm going to show you some numbers. And I want you to think about that. What do they mean? Here we go. 1, 2, 840, 20. Some of you have seen this last time. If you don't remember, you failed the quiz. 1 is 1 degree Celsius. This is the global average temperature rise since the pre-industrial level, since that agrarian society. It's actually 1.2. I just rounded off as 1. Okay? That's the global average temperature rise. What is 2? That's 2 degrees Celsius. That's the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement is 1.5, but frankly, anything below 2 is judged to be reasonable, okay? That's the Paris Agreement, 2 degrees Celsius. We should not keep it beyond 2. The next number is 800. We're not living on Venus. If we are to keep the global average temperature rise below 2 degrees, you got a budget of 800 billion tons of CO2 globally. 800. The next number, that's a big number. 800 billion tons, 800 trillion kilograms of CO2. The next number is 40. That is, we emit today 40 billion tons of CO2 per year, globally. The last number is 20. We got 20 years left. Okay? This is the horror movie. And that is if 40 remains flat. 40 is actually increasing, so it may be less than 20. And we talk about 1 degree, 2 degree as if that's a global average. That's very technical, scientists believe. But reality is that there's a distribution. This is data from NASA of summer temperatures. Some summers are hotter, some summers are colder. That's red and blue respectively. And this is 1960s, 70s. You can find yourself when you were born and what happened thereafter. Okay? So it's 1950s. I was born in the 60s, early 60s. And now this distribution is going that way. That tail of the distribution, which is 2 or 3 times, 4 times sigma, standard deviation, that is reaching probabilities that the Earth has never seen. Or they saw it millions of years ago. And that tail has a disproportionate effect compared to the average. And that is what is creating havoc. Whether it's drought, extreme heat, wildfire, all of this, floods. I was in India, spent about 12 days in India. I mean, those of you who have been there, MR was there actually for the B20 meeting, the Business 20, 2 weeks before the G20. And you don't have to explain climate change to people in the global south. I was in Hong Kong thereafter, and a few days before that, 25% of the annual rainfall fell in one day. And Hong Kong has tremendous infrastructure, but they still had flooding. And they were complaining, they said, oh my God. And then Libya happened, 6,000 people died. They stopped complaining. He said, thank God we're in Hong Kong. Okay? So that's what's going on. So just quickly, this is water consumption. This is the water tsunami. Okay? It's going up. This is just, 100 years, 120 years. Most of it is used for agriculture. There's domestic use, a lot of it is wasted. Industrial use. Water is used mostly for agriculture to grow plants, to feed animals. This is the food tsunami. This is only 60 years. That is the meat consumption, okay? Meat consumption, and that's going up exponentially. This is only 60 years. And if you look at where it is going up and what meat is being consumed, for every kilogram of beef that is eaten, 100 kilograms of CO2 are emitted. So there was a reason why our ancestors did not like to eat beef. I mean, they may have reasoned it differently, but that's some of the implications of that. And pork and chicken are, better, but not that much. Go vegetarian. My wife will be very happy I said that. She's a vegetarian, I'm not. But this is, you can now look at all of them and, this is the biodiversity, declining biodiversity, and this orange line at the bottom is business as usual. We're going to lose the biodiversity if we don't turn it around. Otherwise, the species are just extinct, going extinct. 50% of the coral reefs are gone, okay? Because the temperatures have gone up. We're now trying to restore that in some way. Okay, this is the horror movie. I don't want to leave you on a Friday evening with horror. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I call this a defining challenge because it's going to affect every human being. Okay, when you have a heat wave, no one is spared, unless you have air conditioning, but only 8% people in India have air conditioning. 92% do not, okay? So this is not just an energy problem. What happens in energy affects water. What happens in water affects food. What happens in food affects biodiversity. They're all interrelated. Ecology, public health. And climate change aggravates all of them, okay? That's the reality. That's sustainability. So what do we do about it? And by the way, this has been recognized. All major nations have a climate goal. India is 2070, net zero. US is 2050. China is 2060. Germany is 2045. This is all a race. It's like an Olympic. The United Nations has sustainable development goals. More than 60% of the Fortune 500 companies have some kind of climate goal, a sustainability goal. And if you ask the reality, how do we actually navigate to get there? No one really knows. Okay? As I said, I was in the B20 meeting 2 weeks before the G20. Well, this is the G20 declaration from India. The top issues are sustainable development, climate change. The top issues. Chapter 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. Green Development Pact, C. This is the issue. Prime Minister Modi came and spoke in the B20. That's his top issue. So this is big because people realize that it's going to affect human beings. It's going to affect adaptation, huge measure. So what do we need to do? I'll just put one chart. There's so many things around it. I'm just going to talk about the energy part because a lot of people are trying to figure out how to transition from a fossil-based economy to a non-fossil-based economy. This is not going to be easy. On the vertical axis is the rate of emissions. On the horizontal axis are the years. The yellow curve on top is business as usual. If you want to keep it below 2 degrees, that's the emission profile. So that gap out there is the reduction of CO2 emissions, which we call mitigation, okay, by doing something about the coal plants or steel and cement, et cetera. But that's not enough. There's a blue band at the bottom, which is we've got to suck out CO2 from the atmosphere, or methane. Methane is really bad. Okay, because if you don't do the blue, you don't get to 2 degrees. You don't get to net zero within this century. If you want to go 1.5, it's even more aggressive. That is what is needed. It's not, people sometimes say, should we do this or that? Which is more important? We don't have that luxury anymore. It's and. It's not either or. It's and. So we're talking about, okay, I'm going to go back. Talk about gigatons of CO2 per year. Okay, we're throwing numbers. Oh, we got to remove 10 gigatons of CO2, and we're going to mitigate 50 gigatons of CO2 per year. Okay? People, let's Compare it to what? So here's my second quiz to you. Bring out your calculators. What is the total weight of all 8 billion human beings on Earth? In gigatons, in billion tons. Someone is using a phone out there. The calculator, are you calculating? Oh, great, fantastic. You A+ up there. It's half a gigaton. Okay? So we are talking about industries that have to change, or industries that have not been created. We have the opportunity to do that now. And I would say that whatever 10 billion people, which is by mid-century, when our kids and grandkids, I'll be gone, but the kids and grandkids, by the mid-century, 10 billion people will consume electricity, heating, cooling, transportation, food, textile, water, cement, steel, information, ChatGPT. Fantastic, AI, wonderful. The fastest growing electricity sector today in the United States is information technology, okay? 8 billion people, $100 trillion global economy, transitioning from a 20th century paradigm to a 21st century sustainable one, hopefully. Humanity has never done this before. This is war footing, okay? This is we are looking at weapons of mass destruction right now. And this world war is not between human beings, hopefully not. It's with Mother Nature out here. If you don't listen to Mother Nature, she'll make us listen. So what do we do about it? We have had some breakthroughs. In the United States, unconventional gas has been, we got off coal because of gas, as long as it doesn't leak. This is renewable electricity, the first time ever in human history at this scale, the cheapest way of producing electricity. We should clap or applaud. Amazing. Yeah, this is great. This is technology. Electrification of transportation. The battery cost is coming down to about $100 a kilowatt hour, the capex. And if it reaches that and goes below, it's going to go below, then electric vehicles become cost competitive and range competitive as gasoline cars without a subsidy. My wife and I both drive EVs now, and we rarely look at the gas prices in a gas station. It's about, what, $6 or $7, something like that in California. If you're using electricity, it's less than $1 a gallon of gasoline equivalent. Okay? So this is transition. If there's a car company that does not have an electrification plan, it's going to go out of business. Okay? This is a tectonic shift. And let's not forget LEDs. Those people that did not have lighting in the world, and there were 1.5 billion people who did not have lighting in the world, now have lighting because that solar, can light. Otherwise, if you have an incandescent heater, you never have light then. Okay, so this is an amazing story, but this is not enough. We cannot address all those complexities just by solar, wind, and batteries. We need much more, and I won't go into the detail. We need storage we need nuclear, we need industrial heat. Food sector, 25% of the global emissions, more than transportation. Transportation is 14%. And we need a massive effort to pull out CO2 from the atmosphere. So I'll just walk you through a few of them. What do we talk about? The electric grid. The red is the human population. The lighting is where the electricity is. Just to overlay the two. Now you can tell the haves and the have-nots, by the way. Okay? The greatest engineering achievement of the 20th century was the US National Academy of Engineering. Okay? It is, because without that electricity, that's a fundamental infrastructure. We'll be nowhere right now. We'll be in the agrarian society. Okay, so that grid has to change. Why? Because it was never meant for solar and wind fluctuating. So this is the grid on the edge of change. There are wildfires that are Californians. How many Californians out here? Okay, well, most of you. I don't have to explain wildfires out here due to electricity. Maui just had a horrible event. There is cybersecurity effort, there is electrification of transportation, and there's renewables. The grid of today was not designed for that. Okay? This is a fundamental infrastructure. Storage is going to be a huge deal. I won't go into more details. Maybe I'll skip this in the interest of wine. So we have lithium-ion batteries, but that's not going to be enough as you penetrate more renewables. We don't have the batteries. We're developing it right now that you need for long-duration storage for the electricity grid. Oil, gas, and coal provide 80% of their primary energy. This is all the oil and gas pipelines. This is coal. We move oil by oil tankers. 80%, that infrastructure is in place. And that's causing, the burning of that is causing climate change. So we need a greenhouse gas-free, energy-dense fuel. Electricity is not going to be enough. We need a fuel. Because many of the things cannot be run by electricity alone. And what is that? Well, you got long, shipping, container ships. You got planes that are not going to run on batteries. You can go from in a 5-passenger plane from here to San Jose, maybe. But going across the oceans in batteries, not yet. We don't have the batteries yet. Lithium-ion is not going to cut it. And things like cement, steels, and petrochemicals, we don't know how to do it with electricity alone. So hydrogen has been proposed. We want hydrogen at a very cheap price at a gigaton per year. Okay, that's the goal. This is by the Department of Energy. This is called the hydrogen earthshot. Like the moonshot, hydrogen earthshot. Where are we with that? People are saying, okay, let's do electricity and produce hydrogen. Well, okay, let's do it. Okay, oops, I think those are gone. Those slides are gone. Okay, that's expensive. So we need other ways to produce hydrogen. And as I said, we need to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. People are making machines like these fans to remove CO2, and the amount, it's like blowing the atmosphere through the fans. I'm a big fan of that. Needs a lot of energy, and that energy better be carbon-free. On the other hand, I think we should pay attention to other ways of removing CO2 from the atmosphere. Let me give you one example. Crop residues. Crop residues on an annual basis remove 10 gigatons of CO2 per year. And what do? Not much. In many parts of the world, we burn it. And that carbon goes back to the atmosphere because that's the cheapest way to renewing the field. How about figuring out a way, a low-cost way, to convert these crop residues into soil carbon and recarbonize the soil? But it better be dirt cheap because it's dirt. And so these processes of low-cost technologies, because if you can store the carbon in the soil, the farmers will get carbon credit for that, and that's a revenue stream they have not yet really accessed. Okay? Methane is a big deal. Methane has led to almost half of that global warming. And I'm going to go, okay, this is right before you wind, so bear with me now. This is methane goes down in concentration in the atmosphere, and it's declined, but it starts off with a global warming potential of 120. Okay? And it's at 2 ppm as opposed to CO2, which is at 420 ppm. So the question is, why does the methane concentration go down? The short-term effects are really bad on methane. And methane comes from rice paddies, comes from cows burping. That's most of the methane emissions. And wetlands, etc. And now if the permafrost warms up, methane will be produced. Okay? So why is methane coming down in the atmosphere? And this is where you have to bear with me. This is how it works. You remember this ozone problem we had? Well, ozone is very important for us, not only to block UV light, but also to remove methane, because ozone, when it absorbs UV light, breaks down into oxygen molecule and oxygen atom. And those oxygen atoms are highly reactive. They move around, and they hit an oxygen molecule, they form ozone again. But once in a while, they hit a water molecule, which is water vapor, and they form a free radical. I'm sure from the medical thing you've heard of free radicals that are not good for your body. Well, it's really good for the atmosphere. The free radicals can then activate methane, and they form something called a methyl radical. When it combines with oxygen, goes down to CO2. Okay? That's the mechanism that nature uses to burn methane at room temperature. You cannot burn otherwise methane at room temperature. But we're not going to heat up the atmosphere to 800 degrees Celsius. There's no way. So you've got to find room temperature. This is how it works. So now the question is, how do we replicate it? And this is what's some work going on in our labs out here of how to replicate that and throw it out in the atmosphere to remove the methane. Again, I wanted to show this again because these are all interrelated. And I want to talk a little bit about education, since you're an educational institution. Those of you who have gone through science, engineering, social science, you specialize. Oh, you're in the economics department, or you're in the physics department, or mechanical engineering, or material science, or political science, right? You specialize. That's important. You need depth in some field. But these are all interrelated, and you cannot ignore that. The complexity comes when they're all interacting. So one of the things, we have launched a new school, Stanford. We have 6 other schools: engineering, business, medicine, law, humanities and sciences, and education. And we launched the Doerr School of Sustainability in the holistic manner, the first school in 75 years. And we launched it last year. We are 1 year old. It's an all-campus effort. It has to be. It's not just a business issue or a law issue or an engineering or science. It's all of the above. So the school is a vehicle to get all my colleagues and the students from all over campus and focus them on this issue and get the innovation ecosystem that you are part of around here to be dedicated to this, because this is going to affect every human being. I'm an engineer by training. Engineers, tend to solve problems. That's what we are trained to do. You can't find a more meaningful and purposeful problem than this one. So we are reimagining academia. This has to be reimagined because all the schools that we have, not just at Stanford, everywhere else, were created in the 20th century, some in the 19th century, some maybe in the 15th century or something, right? And this is a quintessential 21st century issue. We have to think differently. We have to think outside the box, and we've got to go bold. So our education, here's what we do often: climate science, energy, water, food. We're experts in that. And our schools, our universities are in science, engineering. Sustainability is all of the above. And we have to change our way we educate. Not only our own students, we're going to make our education available free to the world, okay? Through video. We are video recording all our classes. We're going to make it available. Case studies and others, and how we educate, the questions, how we offer students questions of how to answer them, how to think critically about these issues. Let me end with the same picture, and it's about how you approach it. And this is painted on my office. My staff heard me use this and got it painted on my office wall so they'd never forget it. And it's an indigenous saying: we do not inherit this earth from our ancestors. That's a traditional way of thinking about it. The better way to think about it is we borrow it from our children. So the next 10 to 20 years is going to be super important. And if we don't take care of this, our children and grandchildren will have some serious issues out here. So let me pause. Happy to answer any questions. Yes. Do you have a mic? Oh, here we go. I think this. I think they have to turn on from that side. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you for those inspiring remarks and kind of making us aware of the scary moment we live in, Arun. I'm Radhika Shah, Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs. My question is around how do we balance dealing with the sustainability challenges and the climate crisis and having a just transition on human development so that we live the spirit of the SDGs of leaving no one behind? And how do you bring that into the education in your school?
Well, that is one of our core values in the school. It is, we cannot leave behind anyone in this transition. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the 20th century. There are lots of unintended consequences, and frankly, some intended consequences as well. So we cannot afford to. This is one of our North Stars, is be inclusive. This is, by the way, one of the major topics I heard for Prime Minister Modi at the B20 meeting is the inclusiveness of India's approach, frankly, to this, including the global South, other countries, Africa, and Latin America, South America, etc. So this is super important, and I have faculty focused. We're hiring faculty in environmental justice. Environmental justice is not just a domestic issue. It's an international issue. Most of the CO2 in the molecules up in the atmosphere were emitted by the global north. The impact of that is in global south, mostly. Not that we don't face it. So this is a justice issue. Okay, so inclusiveness in developing a new economy, super important. And there are many aspects to it. Yep.
Thank you for your talk. My name is Vince Coley, founder of Moonshot at Silicon Valley. The question for you, why it took 75 years to build a school, and why it is important now? Why couldn't it wait?
We didn't take 75 years to build a school. We launched the school after 75 years. The planning took about 4 or 5 years through COVID. The idea, when a new president came in, they said, okay, what should we do? What are the important things? And this came up from a groundswell of ideas. And that's what led to this. And what was the other question?
What's the future? What is your moonshot for this building?
Oh, there are multiple. This is, I want to make sure that we all agree on this. There's not a single moonshot, there are multiple. It's a plural. Moonshots was fantastic. In fact, India just landed on the south pole of the moon. And fantastic, but behind that there was a lot of innovation that went into it. Here we have a problem that is multiple moonshots. In fact, we have a moonshot factory that we have in our school called the Accelerator. Our first moonshot is greenhouse gas removal from the atmosphere at the gigaton per year scale. If we don't do that, we're not going to make it, right? We're not going to keep it below 2 degrees. So that's one of the moonshots. There are moonshots on adaptation. Your heat security. When your wet bulb temperature exceeds 35 degrees Celsius, humans don't survive. And above 30 degrees Celsius, vulnerable population, young kids, adults, pregnant women, they'll have problems surviving that heat. So heat security, food security, water security, this is adaptation. That's a moonshot. How do we get information to people, warning and preparation to people so that they can ride through one of these climate events that are happening? I mean, that's a moonshot. It may not be as sexy as going to the moon and coming back, but boy, it's super important for human beings. Yep.
So first of all, Dr. Majumdar, I think we should probably consider labeling your Doerr School of Sustainability the Shantiniketan of United States. Because I have never seen another example of this kind of holistic, multi-spectral, multi-dimensional thinking that you are bringing. So this is absolutely phenomenal. I love the fact that you're trying to remove these artificial barriers, this fragmentation between schools of thinking. And so my question to you is, now that you are building this, what I'm calling the Shantiniketan of the United States, are you looking at some aspects which the real Shantiniketan has, which is science married with the arts,
Absolutely.
with the social, economic things? Is that part of what your thinking is?
Absolutely. We have social sciences division within the school with joint appointments with all other schools. We have joint appointments with every other school. I think we're the only school to do that. Social sciences division, behavioral changes, that's very much in the school. My most interesting, we have been only 1 year old, and we have had, on an average, at least 2 visitors of a heads of state or deputy heads of state or a CEO or an organization for the last 2. We're trying to keep up. One of the most interesting visits I had was Cardinal from the Vatican Church, Cardinal Turkson, who's the number 2 person dedicated to, he might be the next pope. And the reason, I'm not a Catholic, as you can tell, and I'm not that religious either. But the approach that they took was profound, I found, at least listening to him, that how you treat Mother Nature is a reflection of how you treat yourself. Wow. Okay? And we asked the question, well, the Vatican Church is leaning into this. I'm sure, and they have 1 billion people following them. Other religions have 1 billion people following them. Why don't we get the religious leaders all together and get them to talk about it? Because they did come together on some issues that are common. For example, the religious leaders got together against human trafficking. Because human trafficking is a universal bad. Everyone accepts that. This is a universal issue for humanity and our planet. And humanity and planet are not separated. So this is something we are thinking through right now, is that can we appeal to the organizations that have these mass following and get them, they're already interested in this. One of my advisory council members is the head of the US Olympic Committee. I said, let's get the International Olympic Committee to talk about it, because this is, imagine if Messi talks about this. Or now that we have the World Cup coming up, Virat Kohli talking about it. Now that is going to move some needles somewhere, right? That's what we need to do. We need the discourse.
Kamal Bava from University of Massachusetts at Boston, and also A3 India. I've taught sustainability science at the graduate level for almost 12 years, 15 years. Did everything possible to get the university moving in that area. And I find it really amazing how long it is taking for the universities here to really pay attention to sustainability science. And we need many more. And as you know, the first effort was at Arizona State, where they transformed the whole system.
That's right.
But so how do we accelerate this thing here in the US, but also more importantly, so after getting frustrated and disappointed with my own university, and that's what I did in India, set up a A3, which is like a school of sustainability science with 25 faculty members working on a wide variety of issues you outlined. But India needs at least 100, 200 schools of sustainability. So I'll be very interested in your thought. We can talk later too. How do we accelerate that?
First of all, I couldn't agree more. Arizona State, Michael Crow is a thought leader and mover and shaker. He did that. Colombia is doing it. We should not be the only ones doing it. It has taken too long. I will tell you, and as my friend and mentor who passed away recently at the Hoover Institution, George Shultz, used to say, at some point, people will be mugged by reality. This is going to affect every human being. Every country, major countries and corporations are talking about it. If the academia does not move and reimagine itself, it'll be irrelevant. Very simple, because society is moving that. We cannot live in our ivory tower. We got to engage, right? This is part of re-engaging with society. Academic institutions have to be, what's the purpose of academic institutions if it doesn't provide value to society? This is the value. Talking about India, frankly, the Indian, when I was there in the last couple of weeks back, about a month ago, India's on the move on many fronts. Landing on the moon, the digital infrastructure, it's the best in the world in terms of payments and all that. And I was, happened to know the people who put that together, Nandan Nilekani and others, and they're now looking at this to create the platform for sustainability. Frankly, we're talking to them with their foundations. So I think the idea of using this for education may not be the traditional way, but could be ways that building on platforms that are actually working in a scalable thing. Scaling education, just like scaling to the gigatons, scaling education is super important. And the way we have structured the 20th or 19th or 18th century education is not quite scalable. We need to figure out a different way. Let's take the last few questions and then we got to go, right? So.
Thanks, great talk. Ramanan Lakshminarayan from the One Health Trust and Princeton. Two questions. One is, we're setting up this sort of campus, and I had to engage in these issues of actually having sustainability from day one, right? So no plastics. We're trying to do, compress earth blocks and all of that. But I would have thought that simple stuff like storage, energy storage would have been solved. Karnataka, Bangalore, insulation rates are not that high. You can go 2 weeks without proper sunshine. It's not California. And I'm just surprised that some basic building blocks of what we need to make this transition are just not there, even though I imagine that DOE and others have put billions of dollars into this. So are we getting our priorities right, first of all? And the second part of that question is, I also feel that you brought up UPI and of course the moonshot, but UPI is a particularly good example where India is unconstrained by legacy systems that exist in the US. We're not able to do EHR here because the legacy system will not allow electronic health records of any size. UPI could never happen here just because there's too many players that are there. What are your thoughts on that? What are the things that we have not built in India and therefore we have the ability to innovate? These are only two examples. We can probably go through many such examples where mobile phones were a great example, right? We just didn't have very good landlines, so we all jumped straight to mobile phones. So in that sense, how are you thinking of India as an opportunity for developing the solutions of sustainability from there and with that population?
It's a great question. I'll tell you, we have an advisory council in my school, and we talked about our global engagement strategy as where to focus our engagement internationally. The number one focus is India. Number one. Not because I look Indian or I'm Indian origin, no. It's because it's strategically important. There's so many reasons: population, openness, the ability to create new infrastructure that does not exist, and the ability to innovate and think differently than doing what the West has done in the past, right? Like UPI is a fantastic, Aadhaar and UPI, fantastic example of that. I think there's an opportunity out there, massive opportunity, and that's where the youth is, to be honest, right? So I think Indonesia is another. I was in Indonesia as well during this trip. And I think we have to look at that as an opportunity to do things to showcase it can be done. Because everyone else otherwise thinks it's a risk. And this is going to take a lot of money, trillions of dollars of money. Risk has to be mitigated somewhere so that people see, has to be an iconic example. And I think India, UPI is an example where other countries are now saying, that's what I want to do. I don't want to, sorry, my wife works for Visa. I don't want to do the Visa, we should get Visa, I should say that. But a UPI, a digital payment system, which is public, right? That's the way a lot of other countries are now looking at. That's the infrastructure we want to create. So I think India can showcase in many ways what could be done, right? And instead of just following the West. Now, some of the things out here in the West have done really well, and we should not reject it, but adapt it to the needs of it. Okay, there was one last question. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Majumdar. The vision of the Doerr School is very inspiring, and it's also inspiring to me that you, an Indian, is in charge or at the helm of this very ambitious charter. So my question to you is, how can this community, the Indiaspora community, help you and selfishly help all of us in this mission?
First of all, thank you for asking that question. The reality in academia is the dean is not in charge. It is the faculty and the students, and our job is to help them. Let's be honest about this. But I think what people can do, and delighted to see the support from the Indian diaspora, but I think there needs to be a groundswell of engagement on this. How can we use the digital infrastructure where we can communicate to do something good, right? Now we could do today. How do we raise awareness of issues that people are going to face? I want to give the opportunity for every Stanford undergraduate student to spend a summer overseas. The sustainability core, like the Peace Corps. Because I think it's fair to say that the rest of the world knows more about how America works than the United States Americans know about the rest of the world. This needs to change. And I think this is something that maybe you can help and enable. I've talked to my Stanford alums around Asia. They all saluting and said, when can we host these students? But it's not just Stanford students. It needs to be bigger than Stanford. Get other academic institutions to change. Get other students to go. Let's create a youth sustainability corps, right? To go and engage and help, just like the Peace Corps, really transform the whole generation. We need the greatest generation right now. Thank you.